Hey guys, thanks for watching. It's VaulSC here. Thanks for watching another bat rep video. This time it's going to be between the Invincible army of Yuching and the vanilla Nomads, and we will be playing Transmission Matrix. Transmission Matrix is a interesting mission. Note that it's an interesting mission, not a good mission in my opinion. And before we get into the bat rep and the lists, I'm going to spend a bit of time ranting about the scenario in particular and talking you through some theory about it. So if you're here for the theory, keep watching. If you're here for the actual battle report itself, maybe skip forward in the video a little bit until we actually start talking about the pictures and the lists. So let's just get started with Transmission Matrix, and I'll explain why. Although it's a very intriguing mission and a fairly deep mission, I don't particularly like it being in ITS. So the Transmission Matrix is very heavy on hacking, but if one of the two players decides not to bring anything that's hackable, that's significant, I'm not counting things like a Minesweeper bot that, you can isolate that or hack that and it doesn't matter. If one player doesn't bring anything like, attack robots or heavy infantry tags, that kind of thing, then the game just ignores the hackers and we play on as normal. But if both players are bringing hackers, then it's a real war because of the way that the transmission areas work. Just for those of you who are a little bit unclear about how this mission works, and this can trip some people up, I've got a photo here which serves as an overview of the battlefield itself, where I'll talk about the areas, and here's even more of a bird's eye view of it, so we can switch between these views. Let's take this one actually. So there are 5 little objective markers, and if we grab the pink pen, so there's one there, one there, one there, and one there. There's a 4-inch radius bubble, like very carefully around it, like this, where at the end of every game round, you have to have more points worth of stuff in each area to dominate it. So if you've got a model there and your opponent doesn't, or if you've got a more expensive model than all of your opponent's points combined in that area, you count as having controlled that area. And if you control more of the 5 areas than your opponent, for example, you've got 3, they've got 2, or you've got 2, they've got 1, then you get 2 objective points at the end of that game round. So there's these little 4-inch radius bubbles, right? However, the areas or the actual objects themselves count as repeaters for both players, and even though it doesn't say so explicitly in the mission, a repeater is something with zone of control range. So there's actually a larger circle, and this trips so many people up, where the zone of control around it is a massive 8-inch radius, and obviously I'm not drawing exactly 8 inches around these, but I'm just trying to make the point that the green circle is bigger than the pink circle. So you only have to be inside the pink circle for the purposes of capturing the area, but if you're inside of the green circle, you are targetable by any hackers on the table, right? Not only that, if you've got a hacker here, for example, and your hacker is in range of this area here, which is their repeater, and the enemy has some hacker over here, which is not in the Venn diagram's network at all, this hacker can still actually affect this hacker here, because this one up here is actually extending the hacking area for both players. So if we call this, if we even get another color, right? So if I go grab orange, if we call this hacker B and this hacker A over here, hacker A is able to hack hacker B even though B's outside of the areas, because B is using, even though it may not want to, it's using all 5 of the repeaters to extend its hacking area. So in the same way that you walk next to somebody's flashpole spot and you can hack any hacker that's on their side of the board because they're all using the flashpole spot as a repeater, you can use any of these 5 objects as repeaters. And this means that your opponent and you, neither of you have any say about it. Everything is just extended. So if either player has, at least one hacker in their list that's visible or something that's hackable, you can get hacking right from the very start. If you're trying to move across the board with, say, a bulleteer or a tag, for example, it's going to have to work very hard to avoid these very large radius zones, and it's not going to be able to score unless it moves into the hacking area zones, obviously. So that becomes a huge liability. So the first point I want to make about the mission is that if you are going to play the hacking game, and if you're deciding not to play a low-tech faction, or deciding not to, take everything out of your list that is a liability in terms of hacking, let's say you want to participate and you put in this killer hacker and this assault hacker and this regular hacker and this whatever. If you come up against an opponent who's going to be able to out-hack you and do hacking better than you, you're in for a really, really bad time. So let's look at what that might be. Say I'm playing Vanilla Yu Ching and I put a Killer Hacker Ninja in my list, and I've got a Zanji Hacker, and I decide to have a Guilang Assault Hacker in this well, and I decide that I'm done, like I've got plenty of hacking there. And then I run into a player who's got Mary Problems and 2 Interventor Killer Hackers. Well, what's going to happen there is, every time I activate one of my hackers to hack them, all 3 of their hackers are going to ARO and absolutely shred me, right? If it's their turn and the Interventor activates, the Interventor might pick on my best hacker like my Ninja, and the other 2 may attempt to hack back, possibly killing it, but he is BTS 9 and I may not. So it's a bit of a trade, but eventually it's going to trade down to maybe just Mary just being there and all of my hackers dead. And after that, every time I move my Sien Warrior or my Hack Tower, for example, an Assault Hacker is going to oblivion me. So that's really, really bad. At the moment in this game, I think that the 2 best factions for hacking are Nomads in general, for the reasons I just mentioned, Mary Problems and Interventors being there, and potentially linkable hackers as well if you're playing that in the context of Tunguska. Secondarily, Onyx, I think, is extremely strong because all of their killer hackers have Maestro, and they can have Kernel in a link. And being in the link allows you access to Deflect level 1, which makes them even more powerful. So if you're coming up against Onyx, that could be a real problem. You do have some factions, for example, Military Orders, which can have the Santiago Knight, who's a killer hacker with 2 wounds and Deflect level 1. So yes, he's strong. But even better than that is the Hideout killer hacker with the Tinbot level 2, Tinbot B, and that's the list I'll be running for this game. But the thinking is that if you're not one of these factions that can really do that, do you really want to, go along to a tournament where there is a transmission matrix mission present? And that's my criticism of this, is that if you play Pan-Oceania and Pan-Oceania is your only faction, are you really going to have one list in it which basically just takes Hexa killer hackers and regular hackers and try and compete with them and remove your Bulleteer and your Tag and your Killer Guard or your Swiss Guard or anything else? I don't feel like Pan-Oceania has a very easy time putting together a list that has nothing hackable and does well at this mission. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not saying you can't win. I think that there are some good options. It's just that you are handicapped unnecessarily because somebody decided to have Transmission Matrix as one of the options. So that's one of the things I don't like about Transmission Matrix, and hopefully that will become clear as you sort of think about what I've described here, and of course the bat rep we're going to do. The second thing about Transmission Matrix, which kind of gets to me, is it's yet another mission where going second is very, very powerful because you have the option of deciding where to place your models, and you can actually kill your opponent's models prior to moving your guys onto the areas. So for example, let's say you're going second and your opponent moves into the middle, so we're going to get another color here. It's going to be very multicolored by the time I'm done with this. I'm going to use a blue. So let's say they move into the middle and they've got this one and they've got this one because it's their home-based deployment, and they've got this one. What you were able to do then is to move through here and shoot what is in the middle and just put, a very cost-efficient model there, and you are already up 2 points, and just keep doing that for 3 game rounds and you win. Or if they've absolutely just massed a whole bunch of troops there and they've got all their crazy koalas and mines there, you could always just flank around them and take one of the other ones. Cool. And you just do that with minimal effort. There's no way that they can actually cover all 3 objectives, satisfactorily and leave you no opening if you're playing correctly. So going second is very, very strong. So yeah, if you're up against this mission and you don't particularly feel like playing the hackiest of hacking factions, you can always go Ariadne or a Huxlam or something like that and just try and get second as much as you can. And that's what sort of makes it a bit of a silly mission, in my opinion. And yet it's an interesting mission, yet it makes people think. what would I do to fix it? What I would do to fix this mission is I would either make it so that only the central objective is a repeater, so that, you know, moving into the middle and contesting that important objective is what's causing the trouble, and it's not a matter of just hacking your opponent very first order of the game because everything's a repeater. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to actually artificially reduce the area of repeater zone of control hacking range just for this one mission by explicitly saying that the repeaters on the objectives, unlike normal repeaters, only extend the area by 4 inches, making it easier to keep things out of those areas, right? But still, it'd be very powerful because you'd still be able to put your own killer hackers in range of the repeaters on your sort of the side of the table, so there is that. That's another way to do it. Or thirdly, keep it about hacking if you really, really want to, but change the mission so that, you know, less of the points allocations go towards the you know, second game, well, the end of the game run kind of thing. You could even make it so that actually assassinating hackers gives you points. That way, for people preparing for the mission, they've got to think about, well, if I'm going to take lots and lots of hackers for this list, and my opponent actually bluffs and shows up with, you know, nothing that's hackable, then my hackers aren't going to be in any cyber wars, but he could come over to my side of the table with drop troopers and warbands and what have you, and kill a few hackers and get a bunch of points. And I think that would help balance this mission, because you might think about taking maybe 1 or 2 very powerful hackers in Marcus State, but not much more of that. I don't know. I think my first option's the best, where it's only the middle objective that has a repeater range, but there are a few options. So, interesting mission, not the best mission, could be better, but how do you solve the problem? So, next part of this video, going to talk about some lists. So, my opponent shows up to this list, shows up to this game with the following list. So, we've got Heckler with a jammer, probably my favorite Heckler, very, very useful, and very good for this mission as well. Jammers are at a premium in missions where your opponent has to move into an area that you can predict. Moran, obviously, Crazy Koala is very, very good, again, at stopping people once they move into a zone, which they're going to have to do. Zero Killer Hacker, very obvious choice for this mission. Intruder Multi-Sniper, a staple of Nomad lists. Mary Problems, excellent for Transmission Matrix because she's both a killer hacker and an assault hacker, so she can compete using her lightning in the cyber war at the start of the game. But if you come out victorious and they've got no hackers left, you can then start crushing them with your assault hacking device, and that's why Mary is really good for this mission. 2 flashball spots, mandatory for cheerleading, in my opinion. Kreza Borzak, I don't particularly love him, but I do see him a lot, and I respect him, and I think he can be very powerful. He's just quite expensive. Security at Lieutenant, very good, doesn't cost any SWCs for some reason, and high whip for the Lieutenant role. Minesweeper bot, love that guy. Daktari, you want that to revive your intruder or your hackers in this mission, very, very important. Jaguars, pretty much staple of a lot of Nomad lists, especially with a smoke going down for the intruder. Morlock with the assault pistol, my favorite Morlock. Liberto Minelayer, you're seeing him in most people's lists these days because he is undercosted and very, very useful. And the Tomcat, this is nice, this is very sneaky. He doesn't necessarily need the deployable repeater, but for anybody hiding outside of the transmission matrix area, that could ruin their day if he shows up at the back and puts something down for Mary to work with. So a strong list, I really like it. I think it's very well written and appropriate for this mission, actually. Going over to my list, and here's where I get to talk about some of the work that I've been doing in my head to try and solve the problem of, you know, what to do with list prep when you are coming up to a event which includes a transmission matrix. I'm thinking of a lot of different options. I am thinking of just ignoring the hacking game and going with some sort of vanilla combined or vanilla or left lists which actually relies on things that are not hackable. I also am thinking of going full hog and going Onyx and actually putting all the hackers in. But then I thought about Invincible Army, which seems a little bit counterintuitive because they're so vulnerable to hacking. But at the same time, high risk, high reward, they've got the one thing which is probably the best face-to-face hacker in the game at the moment, and that is the Hideowl Killer Hacker, who is in a link team with a guy who has Deflector level 2. So the thing is here is he's a whip 13, he can use a red rum, but when he's facing off against enemy hackers, they're suffering a negative 6 on top. So he's effectively using a hacking program which is, effectively giving your opponent negative 9. And I can't think of anything else in the game that is as effective as this guy is right now. So you can rely on him to try and win the hacking war. Now, if he activates and they're activating 4 hackers to hit him back, you may lose him. That's the problem. So if he activates and 4 Marcus State killer hackers come out and have a go at him, he's probably going to take it. Hopefully some of them will miss because of the negative 6 from the deflector, but he stands a pretty good chance of taking 1 or 2 of them down. If that happens, you can then bring out the Hack Tower Killer Hacker, a model that I don't usually run and don't normally recommend, but this mission is an exception because he's actually surprisingly useful in the hacking war at the start of the game. You might even start with the Hack Tower Killer Hacker, hopefully bait out some enemy hackers out of Marcus State, and ignore some of them, try and cripple a few of them, and then revive them with a doctor. That's so important. I posted a rules question recently. What happens if somebody maestros him and somebody else red rums him and he suffers wounds from both of them, right? Well, only the so if the hideout does it and somebody maestros, somebody red rums, well, he just goes to unconscious because it's simultaneous. That's the way it's worked out. You don't make him go unconscious and then subtract a wound from him, apparently. Back to the Hack Tower, though, the great thing about him is that if somebody red rums him and somebody else lightnings him, and then somebody else brain blasts him, he wants to basically go and face-to-face off against the one red rumming him to reduce the double action. And if he takes 2 wounds as a result of the other 2, you revive him with a doctor, and then he goes and finishes the other hackers off. So with that team of Hack Tower, Killer Hacker, and Hideout, I believe you can solve a lot of problems. I mean, if they're hitting you with more than 3 enemy hackers at a time, things could get a little bit rough. But you've got the tech here to potentially overcome that. And if you do get out of the first turn with one of your hackers alive and none of them alive, then you can start moving around with this very powerful link team and crush them. Only problem is if they do leave some sort of assault hacker in reserve in Marcus State and you end up losing your killer hackers and maybe they kill you in their active turn, then your link team's in trouble. So it's high risk, high reward, as you guys can tell. If it's their turn first, they are going to try and go after the hideout most likely because that's all they can see. You surprise them with a Hack Tower Killer Hacker. The hideout can be a bit vulnerable if he's unlucky, but even if it's the best hacker in the game coming at him with a Maestro or whatever it might be, well, Maestro probably not the best thing because he's got NWI, he still has that 10 bot and he still has a killer hacking device of his own. So I think that theoretically this can actually be quite a good option for this kind of mission. Yeah, and hey, if they're not running any hackers at all, it's just a standard straight-up game where you're trying to use the muscle of your link team to try and crush things and win the game through attrition. So that's this list in theory. I spent a lot of time on it. Tai Sheng's got the deflector and is not chain of command. You really want to keep your lieutenant back there. I think that if there's some other way to squeeze points out of this, maybe making the lieutenant a hacker, level 2, just in case you need something to hack their robots and tags, noting that there's nothing other than the killer hackers there. You're using the muscle of your list rather than hacking at that point. But if there was some way to free up points and make the lieutenant a hacker as well, that's another option. It's just that this list is so tight for points that I'm even putting a war core in there, which I'm having to use to convert to a regular order just to get up to 10 orders, plus the tactical awareness and the lieutenant level 2 and NCO, right? Anyway, let's get into the game and see how this matchup actually goes, because it is, theoretically a good hacking list against another good hacking list. Let's have a talk about it. Okay, so Nomads win the dice roll for first turn, and thinking about the scenario, he initially opts for second turn, then changes his mind, and I'm thinking, actually, I kind of would like first turn, weirdly enough, because even though this is a mission all about going second and moving on to the objectives, if it's this particular matchup, you kind of want to knock out their hackers first and then get away with murder for the rest of the game. Anyway, he does decide to go first, so he's deploying first. Let's talk about where everything shows up. Alright, let's get out a pen. Get the green. So his designated target's over here. I may not have mentioned that you get an extra 3 points if you kill the enemy's designated target with your data tracker. So that is going to factor in, but it's not going to be as crucial as the zones are unless it becomes more of a stalemate with the zones, in which case the designated targets are more important. I believe the Liberto and crew are around here. You've got a Jaguar there, Transconductor here, another Transconductor, Dactari, who's next to the Interventor there. His lieutenant's right there. Got the Morlock back here, Salute baggage spot, and then there's the Cruiser right here, along with his friendly Jaguar. Right on the corner, that's the Zero, and there is a Heckler right here, just to prevent things from coming through there with his jammer. Moran through to the middle with his crazy koalas there and there. So that's a bit of a zoomed out view, although we're going to go in and have a look at this a bit more closely. So a zoomed in look at the right hand flank, you can see the Liberto, you can see the Jaguar. Bit closer, there's the Dactari, Morlock, Intruder, you can sort of see where that is. On the left hand side, again, we've got the Morlock nearby, ready to throw smoke down in front of the Intruder. And yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys can see what's what. There we go, Moran and Heckler. Over to me, this is a picture verifying the location of my hack tower with multi-rifle. He is standing up so he can get a view of the left-hand flank in case something comes barreling down, he can actually shoot it. He, unfortunately, is not within the 4-inch range of this repeater, but the 8-inch range, so he's not scoring just yet, but he can hack, and he is in hidden deployment. Nearby, there's a doctor. Always suspicious when there's a doctor that's not standing next to anything, but the doctor is there because the hack tower is like literally here. So the plan is to move her over and revive him if he goes down. Warcore through there, he's going to be used to dot over to this objective later in the game. That's going to be important. Also noticing the HVT designated target on the left. In the central building, we've got the hideout in the corner with a repair bot nearby, just in case the doctor needs to revive Taisheng or the hideout. I'm thinking that if I go into a bit of a hacking war and I take exactly 1 wound, it's worth going unconscious instead of NWI, because then the doctor can give you the wound back, and then you can keep going, with a fresh 2 wounds to spare effectively. So there's the link team through the middle. This is the central area. So reserve trooper missile's going to go on that spot, but that's in reserve. We've got the HMGs around the corners and the hideout there, as you know, and this crane rank guys representing Taisheng. Lieutenant to the right, going to be ready to move over to the objective with his Lieutenant level 2 orders later, and flashball spot in the corner. Okay, opponent's reserve trooper is Mary Problems, coming up on the right-hand flank near to this Jaguar, and my reserve trooper is this wonderful Zuyong missile launcher, covering a fair bit of the battlefield. So Morlock moves out, and unfortunately Morlock does move into line of sight of the aforementioned Zuyong missile launcher, who absolutely blows him to smithereens, and he is gone. Then the hacking begins, and unfortunately pictures aren't going to be very good to explain what happens as far as the hacking is concerned, but the very first order of, the non-impetuous orders, shall we say, come from Mary. And Mary realizes that, okay, there's a hideout over here, and everybody's in hacking range of each other. So, seeing that she's equipped with lightning, decides to go after him with a lightning. She's willpower 14, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to go double check that. Willpower is 14, BTS 6. So, when the hideout goes back against her, she's going to be -6, that's 8s on 2 dice. And if he red rums, that's, 5 on 2 dice. Whereas he's going to be on 7s after the lightning's taken into account. Of course, she idles first, and I'm revealing the hack tower to have a go at her at the same time. Now, my decision here was to use Skullbuster, not Red Rum, with both of my models, and that may have been a mistake, but my theory here is that she can choose to isolate one of them and ignore the other. And if you're using Red Rum in that circumstance, the -3 is wasted because it's only applying in a face-to-face roll. So, for example, if the hideout... actually, no, now that I think about it, if the hideout does Red Rum and the hack tower also does Red Rum, she can focus one of them and she'd have a -3 regardless, but not a -6 because they don't stack. If one of them does Skullbuster, the other one does Red Rum, and she focuses against the Skullbuster, she's not going to suffer the -3 due to the Red Rum. All things considered, I probably should have done Red Rum, but I decided with Skullbuster because I also wanted to crack part of her BTS as well and try and nail her. But yeah, Red Rum in hindsight may have been better. So then her choice is to focus on just the hideout with the lightning, feeling like she may have not been able to kill the hacked owl off. And over the next, felt like a billion orders, everybody kept hacking each other until we finally got to a point where finally Mary was cracked and resulted in an unconscious Mary, but not before the hideout himself took a wound, as far as I recall. So Mary takes a wound, goes unconscious, because she's up against 2 skull-busting hackers there, and one of them's in a link team with a 10 bot. So poor Mary, but the plan seems to have worked. The Jaguar now throws down a smoke grenade, and we're starting to spend a whole bunch of orders just moving the Doctor down and moving over to Mary. And I think this is the right play if you really committed to the whole hacking thing. I feel like my opponent probably could have identified a bit earlier that I didn't really have any other hackers there ready to go to affect the rest of his army, but he still wanted to have a go at it. And, you know, without counting the points there, I could potentially have had that Dao Ying hacker as a backup, right? So she comes all the way over here and finally revives Mary and decides not to continue hacking me. He's deciding that enough is enough, I need to keep Mary alive, and he wants to have Mary there in the reactive turn because in my turn I can only activate one of my hackers at a time, and it can be him hacking me back with 2 of his hackers, so he wants to see how that will go. In the meantime, moving the Krieger Borak out and finally realizing that I don't have any hackers, or at least none that I want to reveal, I suppose, and moving through towards the middle of the table and having a go at this missile launcher here. So Krieger going after the missile launcher. It's a little bit audacious, a little bit daring, a bit ambitious, but he's managed to sneak just under the 24-inch good range band of the missile launcher. So I'm -3 for cover, -3 for the full burst auto level 2, so 10s on 2 dice, and he's hitting me on 13s with 5 dice. That is enough to win the face-to-face roll and do a wound on the Zuyong, who promptly drops back into cover by optionally failing his guts check. But yeah, was a bit risky. If the missile launcher had hit home, or if he had been just out of the 24 inches and I'd had better odds there, could have been dangerous. But that's why you take missile launchers in link teams. At this point in the game, we both realised that we've forgotten to nominate data trackers, so he now nominates his Krieger, which, now that he's won the face-to-face roll, not that I'm accusing him of doing anything underhanded there, but very convenient, and I've nominated Tai Sheng as my data tracker. Seeing that's the case, he's now moving up the top of this platform to have a go at my designated target, which he promptly does and destroys, netting him 3 objective points, which is quite nice. Then we have some other models just slinking around, moving into better spots, and also the Krieger moving back down towards the central objective and tucking himself into the corner so that he can dominate this, assuming I don't go after him and killing him in my turn, or move something with equivalent points over there, right? Okay. So back to me in my turn, and looks to be from this photo that perhaps I didn't lose a wound with my hideout in the active turn of the Nomads, but we are on to Invincible Army turn 1, and straight away I'm revealing I'm attacking with the hideout, and he's going to go after Mary to try and kill her, and this results in a 0 killer hacker coming out of hidden deployment, or not hidden, a marker state I should say, to have a go at him. So the 0 is going to use Red Rum onto the hideout, and Mary Problems is going to use Lightning. So let's talk about it. The 0 is going to be -6, and Mary's going to be -9, assuming I use a Red Rum on her. I can't remember whether I used Red Rum or Skullbuster, but I think Red Rum still is the better choice, just mathematically speaking. But one of the moves that I can make here is to go after the 0 with just the hideout and let Mary try and throw her 1 dice at -6. Because a lightning's only going to do 1 wound, so at worst I take 1 wound with a hideout, and if I focus down the 0, I can come after Mary later after that. That didn't work, and I wasted a whole bunch of orders, and it eventually did take a wound without actually killing anything, because my dice at this point in the game absolutely turned to shit. It was really bad. I started activating my hack towel to go after the Zero to kill him, because I knew that Mary would only be hitting me with one wound at a time as she was using lightning, and he kept deciding to use lightning instead of red rum, by the way, even though red rum does more damage. And due to some hideous bad luck, the hack towel also went unconscious. I had to spend my last few orders reviving him with the doctor, and then finally going after the rest of them. But by the end of the turn, I had managed to eliminate Mary, and I had managed to eliminate the Zero, but I had lost my hideout. So I'm sorry that I don't have like a readout of every single order and what the dice were and what the exact results were, but I can tell you that the hack tower was revived with one wound left, and the hideout had gone completely, and both Mary and the Zero were destroyed by the end of the turn, but I'd burnt through pretty much all of my orders. So things were looking bad, in my view, because that shouldn't have happened. And the dice really were not good. Like, I was consistently rolling, above 15s for my attack rolls, and also failing some BTS checks, and it was hideous. Noting, though, that I still have some tactical awareness orders, there's a Zuyong here which can actually press around the corner and go after the Kreezer. Now, luckily for me, the Kreezer is at long range with a suppression fire, which he'd gone into previous turn, and I was at optimal range. So with my 5 dice, the Zuyong manages to chug him down with the HMG, and finally a little bit of good luck goes back my way, and the Kreezer is taken out, or made unconscious, I should say. Awkward thing is, though, because I was so unlucky with my hacking rolls, I don't really have enough orders to go and secure the middle objective, which is really bad. So that's the doubly unlucky thing, right? So if I'd managed to complete that, kill both killer hackers with my killer hackers in my active turn, with a few orders to spare, then I'd be in a great position. But unfortunately, even though this guy's unconscious, there's not much I can do. Now, I briefly considered using the NCO orders from Taisheng to move down from this building over to this objective over here, and leave somebody at the back here for this objective to at least tie up the objectives by the end of the turn. I ended up not doing that, and that meant that my opponent, even though he started out on 3 objective points from killing the designated target with a data tracker, would be going up to 5 points now into the game round, even though I'm the one with second turn and actually going second, which is pretty bad. But I can still bring the game back by taking the objectives in the next 2 turns and killing his designated target with my data tracker, so there is that. In his turn, he then throws his smoke grenades over here with the Jaguar. Same strategy as last turn, moving over with the Doctor. Doctor very precious in this game. Running over there, using the power of smoke to get in there and go in and revive the Kreezer. The Kreezer is then able to fire back at me, annoyingly enough, because the Doctor's gone in there under cover of smoke. And the Kreezer, again getting fairly lucky, ripping up my HMG and forcing that back, and then pulling around to actually fight Taisheng, and sadly managing to kill Taisheng as well, which is really bad because that's my data tracker, and that deprives me of potential points later, but also my NCO orders from my lieutenant. So that was pretty hideous. Then going back into prone status. On my side, and that was this very short turn, mind you, didn't really have much to do other than that. So on my turn, now moving the Warcore up so that the problem doesn't occur again, I even had to spend a command token turning my Warcore's order into a regular order to revive my hack tower. Otherwise, he would have done this first turn and, drawn up the objectives for that game round. Anyway, hack tower, he's wounded, he's dripping blood, he's moving across the battlefield, and his plan is to move up here, now that the hackers are dead, and start dealing with the central port of the table with all of the orders that I've got. So he moves through. There is a long-range shootout initially with the Jaguar over here. Jaguar manages to win that with a smoke grenade. No, he actually manages to tank the armor save against the multi-rifle. And then also shooting the Crazy Koala here, because I'm only on 1 wound, I don't want to get damaged by it. And then after that, we are able to move up carefully over here onto this little building and get to a point where we can go after the Kreezer, who is also wounded, and fire at him with the multi-rifle. Now, although he's got full auto and everything like that, it is short range. I do have a multi-rifle. It is a hack tower, and True to expectations, the Hacktow does deliver this and does kill our Cruiser here, and well, at least put him unconscious. That then allows me to move out with my Link team. I've only got 3 of them left. It's the 3 Zuyongs, and I wanted to move into better positions with them, but also to kill the Doctor, I decided to fire the missile launcher at the corpse of the Cruiser, land the splash template down, and blow the Doctor up that way. Only problem with that fancy plan is it kind of runs me out of orders, and it left me sort of sitting out here, so I'm in open territory really, which wasn't great, but I did get the Cruiser and the Doctor, as you can see at the top right. The Hacktow with the last order was thinking about going into TO camo state, but thought better of it and went prone instead, and we've got a good solid 70 points, or 67, whatever it is, hanging out right next to that objective, which is going to allow me to score that 2 points in the second turn. Alright, and Lieutenant just standing up, coming a bit closer, and you know, putting up his body as a potential ARO there. Nomads next turn. There is a drop trooper, which I totally didn't expect, coming on the side of the table, and he's going to be able to go after the Warcore. Now, this is a little bit of a blunder here from Nomads, because he attacks the Warcore at beyond 16 inches range, which means that he's -3 to hit, and the flash pulse is +3. But again, luckily, our Nomad Wildcat combi does get the hits through and kills the Warcore. Then moving a bit closer to the Doctor, and as he goes after the Doctor, I decided to use an alert, which is a fairly rarely used ability, which allows other models in the battlefield to change face. So the alert's going on to this Zuyong over here, who's facing the wrong way, he's facing this direction, and if the Wildcat, if the, whatever this thing's called, if it came too close on this side, it would be able to shoot through and hit the Zuyong in the back arc, which is not really what I wanted. So that happens, but the Doctor does die because of it. Now, he does have some stuff as backup. So we've got a Jaguar throwing a long-range smoke, first of all. What that's going to allow him to do is to stand up with his intruder and sadly go after my Zuyong Link team, which is in a bad place. This is probably on me. I should have really realized that he had something like an intruder hanging around, even though it's a transmission matrix. And this is really costly now because the intruder is able to shoot through the smoke. The Link team can't ignore the smoke debuff, and he's able to go after that missile launcher and one of the HMGs out in the open and just shoot them, which is pretty crippling to lose those models at this point in the game. So he does go after them, does kill them, and I'm left in a position where there's not much left. This is the point in the game where I realized that I couldn't really win, and it's because I was behind too many points. He's got 5 points on the board. For me to kill his designated target, I wouldn't even be doing it with my data tracker because Taisheng's dead. Even though I've got the central objective and the one on my right-hand side, I've got too few orders to really move over there and kill his Wildcat and contest that one, and that would still only net me another 4 points. So it would be a victory of 5-4 if I did that. I could draw it by completing the classified, which was rescue, where you've got to case fact your own guys. But because I had so few orders at this point, it just wasn't really doable even to go for the draw, and that's game over. So it was actually a good game. My opponent did play well. We need to talk about a few things though. Which one of us was luckier with dice this game? Although there were a couple of lucky moments for me, the majority of the important dice rolls did go to my opponent in terms of the hacking, cyber wars, and some of the important shootouts. In terms of my mistakes, obviously there were many. I had an opportunity to score in the first game round, which I gave up, and I didn't. The positioning of my Zuyongs wasn't great, so I could have actually corrected a few things there. Most importantly, though, at the end of the day, I feel like even though this is Invincible Army and you've got so much hackable stuff, I don't feel like the mistake was in my army list. I feel like this is actually a viable army list for this mission. So if you are going into a mission, a tournament that does feature this mission, Transmission Matrix might be very doable with a list like this, but you've got to play very well. You've got to play it correctly. And I think using red rums most often is a good idea if there's any possibility of getting into a face-to-face roll with your opponent. Skullbuster is really only a bit of a gambit if you know that it's going to be direct against your opponent and as a normal roll. Otherwise, it's too important to subtract 3 from them. Sometimes if it's an interventor and you really need that breaker ammunition, that can be another argument for it, but mostly it is going to be red rums. Anyway, a little bit of theory goes a long way. A little bit of luck goes even longer. I think that's the takeaway from this. I definitely do like the hack Tau Killer Hacker in this mission, and the hideout is very, very strong. At some point, I may playtest my Onyx version of this, mission attempt. I think that Kurnow and the Link with Red Rum and Maestro are very, very strong, because you can back them up with your regular Nexus hacker to do the tag possession duties, but also have your new Malignus killer hacker out there with Maestro as well, and Bit and Kiss on the side. And with that dream team of dudes, maybe that will be a better way to go in this sort of mission. Just again, if you do lose the hacking war because you get unlucky, your whole Unidron Link team and most of your army is gonna suffer from it. Anyway, I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll be back with some more infiNity content soon, and you guys have a good week.